After 2 nerve-wracking months of watching my stock portfolio explode, I cashed out. A whopping $800 million. My chest throbbed with adrenaline, my pulse hammering in my ears. I grabbed my phone and called my wife and son. "I'll be home this afternoon," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've got big news. The best news ever." There was a pause on the other end. My wife's voice came back, strangely flat. "You're sure you're coming home today?" "Absolutely, sweetheart," I said, a grin tugging at my lips. "And you won't believe what I'm bringing." She chuckled lightly. "Okay then, I've got a big surprise for you too." I could hardly breathe. The whole drive home, I imagined her, Veronica, standing in the kitchen with a perfectly set table, the aroma of a home-cooked feast filling the air. My son Leo would be bouncing around, yelling with excitement. They'd be over the moon when they heard how much I'd made. But the sight that greeted me when I pulled into the driveway made my stomach lurch. A pile of my clothes, my shoes, even my favorite jackets, lay scattered across the lawn. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Leo, what the hell are you doing?" I shouted, stepping out. Leo looked up, a sneer curling his lips, a cold huff escaping him. "Mom told me to throw all your junk out." My jaw dropped. I sprinted toward the front door, heart hammering, chest tightening like a vice. "Veronica, what is going on?" I froze mid-step. The dining room table gleamed with dishes and wine, the scent of a lavish dinner filling the air. And there she was, Veronica, leaning into another man's embrace, laughing. Damien, her supervisor. My blood ran cold. "Veronica, what the hell is this?" My voice trembled, the words coming out as a roar. She rolled her eyes, smiling in that infuriating, condescending way. "Asher, are you blind? Can't you see what's happening? I found someone better. I'm done with you, a penniless loser. Anyone who stays with you is doomed. You really thought I'd stick around for life?" She leaned closer to Damien, who looked down at me like a cat who had just swallowed the cream. My fists clenched until my knuckles burned. "How long?" I managed, voice low, deadly. "How long have you been cheating on me?" Veronica's smile widened. "A year. He's finally divorced. And now, I'm divorcing you to marry him." The weight of it slammed into me. I had worked in brutal conditions, surveying harsh terrain day after day, sacrificing everything for a life I thought I'd give my family. And she'd spent that year betraying me, turning our home into a stage for her affair. "Fine," I said through gritted teeth. "If you want a divorce, you'll have it. But Leo comes with me." Leo's voice cut through, sharp as glass. "No, I don't want to go with you." He was 14, old enough to understand, I thought. But the disgust in his eyes was unmistakable. "Seriously, who'd want to be with you?" "Mom's marrying a supervisor," Leo said, his tone smug, almost rehearsed. "He makes hundreds of thousands a year. And you, just a pathetic nobody, barely scraping by. Mom already said I'm coming with her. Uncle Damien's my dad now. You're nothing. Don't ruin my future, right, Dad?" He grinned at Damien, calling him Dad, as if it had always been the natural order of things. Veronica's laugh was sharp, deliberate, cruel. "That's my son. He knows how to play his cards right. A broke deadbeat like you doesn't deserve to be his father." I felt ice flood my veins, a cold that made every thought sluggish and sharp at the same time. Leo didn't just reject me, he despised me. "Leo, I have money," I said, my voice trembling. "I can still give you a good life." Their laughter cut me off, loud and mocking. "Asher," Veronica sneered. "You have money? Spare me. We all know how penniless you really are." Leo's smile stretched impossibly wide. "New dad promised me the latest phone. You couldn't even afford it if you tried. And even if you did, I wouldn't want it from you. Mom says you're always upgrading when you can. I'm going to live the good life with my new dad." Damien smirked, cold and calculating. "A man has to be capable. It's only natural that an incapable man loses his wife and child. Blame yourself, buddy." Veronica nodded, picking up a stack of papers from the counter. "Divorce papers, Asher. Sign them. Since Leo's staying with me, the house will be mine." I stood there, numb, the faces of my wife and son suddenly alien, terrifying. "Seriously, Leo," I said, my throat tight, "are you really giving up on your dad? Aren't you afraid you'll regret this later?" Leo rolled his eyes, impatient. "Just sign the papers. I can't wait for the divorce. I have a new dad, and I don't need a useless one like you." I won't regret it. I felt my heart fracture completely. Without another word, I signed the papers. Veronica laughed, triumphant. Poor loser. Always fantasizing, always begging. Not in a million years, Asher. Now, get out. Don't ruin our dinner, or your piles of junk at the door. Leo chased me to the car, grinning, smug and cruel. I spared one last cold look before walking away. I didn't want my things. I didn't want him. I checked into a hotel that evening. Before the divorce was even finalized, Veronica posted a photo of herself, Leo, and Damien on Snapchat. "My beautiful family of 3, she captioned. Relatives started asking questions, and she replied with a laugh. What else? I dumped my useless husband and found a man 100 times better. Leo even sent a voice message. Yeah, everyone, Uncle Damien is my dad now. I scrolled through the messages, my fingers trembling slightly. Don't ever associate me with Ash or that pathetic loser. Their words cut through me like knives, laced with cold contempt. And then the laughter, the cruel, echoing laughter of relatives who had once smiled politely at family dinners, filled my screen. Oh, so that's what happened. Asher was always a deadbeat anyway. Veronica, you're so capable. Congratulations. Seriously, why is Asher still in the group? At first, I hadn't planned to respond. I hadn't even thought about leaving the group chat. But now I decided I wouldn't. I wanted to watch. I wanted to see exactly how well Veronica and Leo would fare without me. A month later, the divorce was finalized. Veronica wasted no time. She practically dragged Damien to the courthouse for a marriage license, with Leo cheering them on like it was the opening night of a Broadway show. I felt absurd, ridiculous even. All those years I had scrimped and saved, providing everything for Veronica and Leo, putting aside my own comforts to invest wisely. My ordinary job had never been enough, so I poured myself into the stock market. I'd hit a jackpot with a killer stock, $100 million, practically overnight. But I'd always intended it for them, and now, the money was mine. That very day, I found myself at the sales office of Grand Manor Estates, a high-end complex offering move-in ready luxury homes. As I walked through the lobby, my heart rate settled into a steady rhythm until I froze. There they were, Veronica, Damien, and Leo, browsing through properties. What a small world, I muttered under my breath. I was about to turn and leave, to come back later, when Damien spotted me. His eyes lit up with mockery. Well, Asher, he drawled. What are you doing here? Crashing the party, as usual? Veronica and Leo both turned, faces twisting into the same smug sneers they always wore around me. Asher, you poor jerk. Don't tell me you're actually here to buy a house. Veronica's voice dripped with disbelief. Even the smallest condos here are over $500,000. You couldn't afford a broom closet. Leo whipped out his phone, snapping a picture and sending it to the group chat. Within moments, my relatives were flooding the chat with sarcastic voice messages, laughing at my expense. Asher, why are you still here? Didn't we agree? Veronica's moving on. You're divorced. You can't even make a down payment. Stop embarrassing yourself. We all get it. You're hung up on Veronica. But that doesn't make you any less useless. Veronica played each voice message aloud, her grin triumphant. I just watched, expression unreadable. And then slowly, deliberately, I pulled out my phone. Who said I'm hung up on Veronica? I asked, voice calm, controlled. I'm here to buy a house, I said, letting my words land like stones in a quiet pond. The reaction was instantaneous. Stop bluffing, came the chorus, sharp and mocking. You couldn't even get a mortgage here. If you could afford a house, I'll... Damien smirked, cutting off the exaggeration. Relax, Veronica. If he says he's buying a house, let's just see. Veronica's smirk turned wicked. She started a Snapchat group video, the screen filling with laughing relatives. Call everyone. Watch this. A guy with no shame pretending to be rich. Come and enjoy the show. The saleswoman, Sarah, blinked at me, uncertain but polite. So, what kind of property are you interested in? I smiled faintly, letting my gaze sweep past her to Veronica. How big of a place are you planning to buy? Her chest puffed out with pride. My husband is buying us a fully furnished 135 square meter apartment, 3 bedrooms, 1 living room, over $3 million. Something you'll never, ever afford. Damien's grin was smug, self-satisfied, while Leo's eyes sparkled with the smug triumph of a son fully convinced he had the upper hand. I turned to Sarah. Do you have any villas? I want a villa. Money is no object. The laughter erupted instantly. Veronica doubled over. Leo practically fell out of his chair, and the group call was a cacophony of disbelief and mockery. Asher, you're really a show-off. Who does he think he is, saying money is no object? He's pathetic. Even the poor saleswoman looked uncertain, awkwardly clearing her throat. Sir, are you sure you want to look at villas? I nodded, serene, steady. Absolutely. Show me your best ones. Sarah's brow lifted, then she led me to the villas, explaining every detail of the properties like a teacher guiding a student. Mr. Asher, this villa is exceptional, both in its location and interior design. The price, it's over $22 million. What do you think? I let my gaze drift over them, Veronica, Damien, Leo, before answering. Calmly, surely, decisively. I'll take this one. The room froze for a heartbeat, then erupted again. Veronica laughed, Damien scoffed. Leo rolled his eyes. Their ridicule had expected a refusal, a stumble, a blunder. But I didn't flinch. I didn't falter. The villa suited my taste perfectly, and the money I had, my money was finally mine to use, just as I wanted. Damien muttered under his breath to Sarah. Don't get your hopes up. He's just trying to look important. I didn't care. I had finally stepped into a life I chose for myself, and they could watch if they wanted. The deed was signed within an hour. Sarah had tried to hide her shock, but I saw it. That moment when her eyes widened, when she realized I wasn't bluffing. 8 figures transferred from my account to the developers with a few clicks. The villa was mine. Veronica's face had gone pale. Not angry pale, but frightened pale. The kind of pale that comes when your entire worldview collapses in an instant. Her hand had instinctively reached for Damien's arm, and I noticed how quickly he pulled away from her, his calculating eyes now fixed on me instead. That's impossible, she whispered, her voice small for the first time since I'd arrived. Damien's smug expression had cracked, revealing something uglier underneath greed. His eyes tracked my movements like a predator's, calculating, reassessing. I could see the gears turning in his head, watching his comfortable future suddenly become uncertain. Leo said nothing. His phone had dropped to his lap, his earlier smugness evaporating like morning dew. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker across my son's face, a recognition that perhaps he'd made a terrible miscalculation. Congratulations on your apartment, I said to Veronica, my tone even and pleasant. I hope you enjoy it. And Damien, I turned to him with a cold smile. I'm sure you'll make a wonderful stepfather. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked out of Grand Manor Estates with my head high, Sarah's business card in my pocket, and my life finally beginning to feel like it belonged to me. Behind me, I could hear Veronica's voice rising, Damien's sharp replies, and Leo's confused questions. But I didn't look back. The drive to the villa took 40 minutes through the evening traffic. I had time to think, to let the reality settle into my bones. I had just purchased a $22 million villa. Me, Asher. The man they'd all mocked just hours ago. The man they'd called a deadbeat, a loser, a nobody. When I arrived at the gates, the security guard recognized me immediately. Welcome home, Mr. Asher, he said, pressing the button to open the iron gates. Home. The word felt foreign and wonderful at the same time. The villa was magnificent in the evening light. 20,000 square meters of Italian marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a private swimming pool glowing softly with underwater lights, a wine cellar carved into the hillside, a home theater with leather recliners, a library with floor-to-ceiling mahogany shelves, a chef's kitchen with state-of-the-art appliances, and 7 bedrooms spread across 3 wings. The grounds included a meditation garden, a private gym, and terraces at multiple levels, each offering a different perspective of the city below. I walked through the empty hall slowly, my footsteps echoing off the marble. In the master bedroom, I stood before the windows and watched the city lights begin to twinkle in the darkness. This was mine. Not something I'd acquired for someone else, not an investment in a relationship that would crumble the moment the money ran out. This was mine. I went to the wine cellar and selected a 1995 Chateau Margaux, a bottle I could never have afforded just months ago. I poured it slowly, watching the wine catch the light, deep and rich as blood. Then I walked to the main terrace and sat in one of the leather chairs, glass in hand, and I allowed myself to cry. Not tears of joy or triumph, but something more complex. Tears for the years I'd wasted. For the man I'd been, grinding away in brutal conditions, sacrificing everything for people who didn't love me, for the humiliation I'd suffered, for the loss of my son, for the cruel, cutting words that Leo had spoken, for Veronica's betrayal, for all of it, but also tears of release. A purging of the old Asher, the desperate, pleading version who thought if he just worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, became successful enough, he could make his family love him. That man was dead, and I was grateful for his death. That night, I slept in my own villa, in a bed the size of a small apartment, with Egyptian cotton sheets and a pillow that cost more than my first month's rent had been. And for the first time in years, I slept without nightmares. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming across the marble floors. I made coffee in the Italian espresso machine, sat on the terrace, and watched the city wake up. My phone had been buzzing all night. I turned it on and scrolled through hundreds of messages. The group chat was exploding. Did anyone else see that? Asher actually bought a villa. How is that even possible? Where did he get the money? Maybe he's laundering money. Nobody makes that kind of cash legitimately. Wait, wasn't he a surveyor? How does a surveyor get $22 million? I told you Veronica should have stayed with him. She threw away a gold mine. Damien, you better watch out. Your wife's ex just became a billionaire. What if he tries to take Leo back? Asher's probably lying. It's probably some kind of scam. But the real messages came from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Asher, my dear boy, I always knew you had potential. I was just waiting for the right time to reconnect. Perhaps you'd like to have dinner with our family? Asher, congratulations. What an incredible achievement. I'd love to hear about your business ventures. Perhaps there's an opportunity for us to work together. Cousin Asher, I hope we can put the past behind us. Family is family after all. I deleted the messages one by one, feeling nothing. These weren't people reaching out from love. They were carrion birds circling, smelling opportunity. I had no interest in feeding them. But there was one message that made me pause. It was from Leo's school. A note saying he'd been getting poor grades and that his behavioral changes had raised concerns from his teachers. They wanted to schedule a meeting with his parents. I stared at that message for a long time. Leo was hurting. Whatever confidence Damien had inspired in him had clearly been built on a foundation of lies and false promises. And despite the cruelty, despite the rejection, despite calling another man dad, my son was still my son. He was still a 14-year-old boy dealing with the fallout of a broken family and a mother's selfishness. I picked up the phone and called his school. This is Asher Chun, Leo's father. I'd like to schedule that parent-teacher conference. 2 weeks passed before Leo came to my villa. He arrived in the afternoon on a Saturday, driven by an Uber. I watched from the window as he stepped out, looking up at the massive structure, his eyes growing wider with each second. He was still in his school uniform, a navy blazer and khaki pants, and he looked small somehow, despite his growing height. I opened the door before he could ring the bell. "Hi, Dad," he said quietly, the words still unfamiliar in his mouth after so long. I stared at him for a moment, this boy who was half stranger and half my flesh. There was something different about him. The smugness was gone. The cruelty had faded from his eyes, replaced by something more fragile, uncertainty, perhaps, or shame. "Come in," I said. He walked through the villa in silence, his eyes growing wider with each room. The entrance hall, with its crystal chandelier. The living room with its panoramic windows. The kitchen that looked like something from a luxury magazine. The swimming pool visible through the floor-to-ceiling glass doors. I could see the calculations running behind his eyes, the slow realization of what he'd given up when he chose Damien over me. "This is yours?" he finally asked, stopping in the middle of the main living area. "Yes." "It's incredible, Dad. I've never seen anything like..." He stopped himself, jaw tightening. He walked to the window and pressed his forehead against the glass. "Mom and Damien are fighting. A lot." I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't interested in Veronica's marital problems, but I was interested in my son. I gestured for him to sit, and we settled into the leather chairs overlooking the city. "Tell me what's happening," I said quietly. Leo was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was small. "After they got married, everything changed. Damien started saying stuff about you, but differently. It wasn't like when he was trying to impress Mom. He started saying you were a fool for not being able to keep Mom happy. That you were weak. That real men make six figures and live in penthouses, not in cramped apartments." I listened without interrupting. Then bills started coming. Like, a lot of bills. Mom would get phone calls from debt collectors. Damien said it was your fault somehow, that you should have taught him about financial responsibility. And then, Leo looked at his hands. Then he started hitting Mom. I felt something tighten in my chest. What do you mean, hitting her? Not like full-on punching or anything, but slapping her when she questioned his spending, pushing her into walls when she was upset about the money situation. He'd say she deserved it for making stupid financial decisions. Leo's voice was shaking now, and Mom would just take it. She'd apologize for upsetting him. She'd make excuses. I stood up abruptly and walked to the window, needing space. This wasn't what I'd expected to hear. Part of me had wanted Veronica to suffer for her betrayal, to face consequences for her cruelty. But not like this. Not with violence. That's when I realized, Leo continued, that you were never the bad guy. You were actually the best of us. You worked hard. You didn't hurt anyone. You just loved us, and we threw it away, because we were shallow and stupid. You weren't stupid, Leo, I said, turning back to him. You were 14. You were manipulated by adults who should have known better. I was cruel, he said, and tears began streaming down his face. I said horrible things to you. I called Damien Dad, like you didn't matter. I threw your clothes on the lawn. I told you I didn't want to go with you, and I meant it in the worst way possible. I sat back down, unsure how to navigate this. Leo, I understand if you hate me, he continued, the words tumbling out. I wouldn't blame you. I made my choice and I chose wrong. I wanted you to know. I wanted to apologize. He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. And I wanted to ask if maybe we could try again. Not like before, but I thought about this boy, this almost man, dealing with a mother's poor choices and his stepfather's violence. I thought about the weight he must be carrying, the guilt that had clearly been eating away at him. And I thought about the 14-year-old version of myself, before life had hardened me into this successful but solitary creature. It's complicated, I said carefully, choosing my words with precision. What you did hurt me deeply, Leo. There's no getting around that. The cruelty, the rejection, the way you turned against me so completely, it broke something in me. I spent weeks in that hotel room wondering if I'd ever be able to trust you again. His face crumpled. But, I continued, you're still my son, and I still love you. Not because you deserve it, but because that's what being a father means. It means loving someone even when they've hurt you. It means giving them a chance to prove they can change. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you so much, Dad. I promise I'll. Don't promise anything yet, I interrupted gently. Let's just take it one day at a time. Okay? We can't undo the past. But we can build something different from the rubble. Would you like to stay for dinner? He nodded, and for the first time in months, I felt a small crack appear in the wall I'd built around my heart. We ordered food from a restaurant I knew, nothing too fancy, just good, simple food. We ate on the terrace as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. And slowly, carefully, we began to talk. Not about the past, not yet. But about his classes, his interests, his dreams. I learned that Leo had been getting A's in mathematics before the family fell apart. That he was interested in physics. That he'd been wanting to learn to play guitar but was embarrassed to ask. I can arrange guitar lessons, I said. There's a music room upstairs. We can set up a proper studio if you'd like. His eyes widened. Really? Really? Music is important. It's one of the things that kept me sane when things were difficult. That night, I made up one of the guest bedrooms for him, the one with a view of the city lights, and we watched a movie in the home theater. He fell asleep on the massive sofa before the credits rolled, curled up like the boy he still was in many ways, despite everything. I sat watching him for a long time, feeling the complicated mixture of love, hurt, and hope that comes with being a parent. The next morning, we had breakfast together on the terrace. He seemed lighter somehow, as if the weight of his guilt had been partially lifted by my forgiveness. But I also saw the damage that Damien had done to him, the way he flinched at loud noises, the way his eyes sometimes went distant and scared. Leo, I said carefully as we finished eating, what's happening at home with Damien? That's not okay. That's not normal, and it's not your fault. He looked down at his plate. I'm going to talk to someone about helping your mother get out of that situation. A lawyer, a social worker, someone who specializes in domestic violence. But I need you to know that if things get worse, if you feel unsafe, you can always come here. Always. This is your home too, if you want it to be. He nodded, relief washing over his features. Thank you, Dad. I was so scared. After I drove him home that afternoon, I contacted a lawyer I knew and set wheels in motion. I wasn't going to abandon Veronica to suffer, despite what she'd done to me. But I was going to make sure my son was protected. 3 weeks later, Veronica showed up at my villa unannounced. She came on a Thursday evening, disheveled and desperate. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her makeup smudged. She had a bruise on her left arm that makeup couldn't quite hide, and she flinched when the security guard opened the gate too quickly. "I need to see Asher," she told the guard, her voice hoarse. When I opened the door and saw her standing there, I felt a strange absence of emotion. No anger, no satisfaction, no vindication. Just a hollow recognition that she'd gotten what she deserved, and it wasn't enough to make me happy. "Come in," I said, and she followed me to the living room like a ghost. "Asher, we need to talk," she said, sitting on the edge of the sofa as if she might be asked to leave at any second. "About what?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Damien, he's not who I thought he was. He's in debt. Serious debt. Hundreds of thousands of yuan from gambling and bad business dealings. The apartment, he lied about his salary. He makes maybe a quarter of what he told us. We can barely afford the mortgage payments. The bank has been sending notices." She looked at me desperately, and I saw the woman I'd married underneath the desperation, scared, confused, lost. "And he, Asher, he hit me." She lifted her sleeve and showed me the bruises, not just the one on her arm, but older ones in various stages of healing. Purple fading to yellow. Fresh marks alongside faded ones. He said it was my fault for questioning his spending. He said I'm stupid with money. He said I ruined his life by marrying him without full financial disclosure. Tears streamed down her face. "I made a huge mistake leaving you. I see that now. You were a good husband, and I threw away something real for nothing." I felt nothing as she spoke. No anger, no gloating, no triumph. Just a deep sadness for the years I'd wasted trying to make someone happy who never truly valued me. "What do you want from me, Veronica?" I asked quietly. "I want another chance. I want to come back. We can try again. I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for everything, and No," I said simply. "But, Asher." "No," I repeated. "You made your choice. You left me when I had nothing, and you did it with cruelty. You humiliated me in front of your new family, in front of the real estate office, in front of the entire family group chat. Now that I have everything, you want me back. Do you understand how that makes me feel?" She was silent, staring at her hands. "The difference between you and me is this," I continued, my voice steady and measured. "When I had nothing, I still loved you and Leo with everything I had. I worked in brutal conditions in the heat and the rain, surveying land for 12 hours a day, because I wanted to build something for us. I invested carefully, made calculated risks with my own money, so that one day you and Leo could have security. But the moment the money stopped, or seemed to stop, you were gone. And you took our son with you. That tells me everything I need to know about the kind of person you are." Tears streamed down her face, but I didn't soften. "I won't take you back, Veronica. I won't do that to myself. But I will help you get away from Damien, because that's the right thing to do, and because Leo shouldn't have to witness domestic violence." I called my lawyer that evening and set up a legal team to help Veronica file for divorce. I paid for a restraining order. I helped her find a women's shelter that could help her rebuild her life. But I made it clear, this was for Leo, not for her. And it was a one-time gesture, nothing more. Within 2 months, Veronica had left Damien. Within 4, their divorce was finalized. She was awarded half of the apartment, which she sold to cover his debts and start fresh. The last I heard, she'd moved into a small apartment in a different part of the city and had taken a job at an insurance company. I saw her occasionally at Leo's school events, always with a tentative smile, always keeping her distance. I nodded when we saw each other. That was all. By the 6-month mark, Leo had moved into the villa on a permanent basis. He had his own suite, a bedroom, a study, and a private bathroom in the east wing. His bedroom had a view of the mountains in the distance. The study had floor-to-ceiling bookshelves that we were slowly filling together, and a desk where he did his homework. We'd set up the music room with a beautiful acoustic guitar and an electric one as well, and he was taking lessons from a renowned musician twice a week. His grades had improved dramatically. His math teacher called me to say he'd gone from a B- to straight A's. His physics teacher mentioned that Leo had started a club at school for students interested in STEM fields. The scared, angry boy was slowly emerging into something different, Something more confident, more curious, more alive. We established routines. Monday through Friday, he attended school, did his homework, and had dinner with me. Weekends, we explored the city together. We went to museums, restaurants, hiking trails. One weekend, I rented a boat and we spent the day on the water, just talking and watching the sunset. Another weekend, we went to a concert, a classical pianist whose performances I'd always wanted to see, but had never felt justified in spending the money on. Do you like this? I asked him during the intermission. I love it, he said, his eyes bright. Can we come to more concerts? As many as you want, I replied. One evening, about 6 months after he'd moved in, Leo and I were sitting on the main terrace with cups of tea. It was autumn, and the city below was starting to glow with the colors of changing leaves. Dad, he asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Are you happy now? Like, really happy? I considered the question carefully, the same question I'd been asking myself for months. I'm content, I said finally. That's different from happy. Happy is what I thought I was when your mother and I were together. I was chasing something external, always trying to be enough for someone else. Content is knowing who I am, accepting my past, and building the future on my own terms. That's worth more than any villa. But you like the villa, right? He asked with a small smile. I laughed. Yes, I like the villa. Comfort is nice. Beauty is nice. But they're not enough on their own. They're just containers. What matters is what you put inside them. Is that why you're spending so much time with me? He asked. Because you're filling the container? Exactly, I said. You're what makes this place feel like a home instead of just a mansion. Leo leaned his head against my shoulder, something he hadn't done since he was very small. I put my arm around him, and we sat together as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. The stock portfolio that had started this entire journey continued to grow. I'd hired a financial advisor, someone competent and ethical, not driven by greed, and together we made careful decisions about where to invest the money. I diversified across industries, made strategic acquisitions, and slowly grew my wealth into 9 figures. But wealth had become abstract to me by then. It was numbers in an account, opportunities to help people, a foundation that I'd started to direct toward education initiatives for underprivileged children. The villa remained beautiful, but it became less a monument to revenge and more a home. I hired an interior designer to help make it warm and inviting. Art filled the walls, pieces that made me happy, not pieces chosen for their investment value. The library became a real library, filled with books we actually read. The music room became the heart of the villa, where Leo and I would play together, or where I'd sit listening to him practice his guitar, hearing his progress week by week. Sometimes I ran into Damien in the city. He'd aged dramatically. His suit was still expensive, but it hung on him loosely, as if he'd lost weight from stress. His hair had gone gray at the temples. When he saw me, he'd nod respectfully, his eyes holding a mixture of respect and resentment. I would acknowledge him with a polite nod and move on. He'd become irrelevant to my life. Sometimes I saw Veronica at charity events or school functions. She was always polite, always keeping her distance. Sometimes she was with a new man, someone who looked kind and stable. I was glad for her, in an abstract way. She deserved to find happiness, even if I would never be the one to provide it. But what mattered most was in my home. It was in my son's laughter. It was in his growing confidence as he excelled in school and explored his interests. It was in the knowledge that we were rebuilding something broken into something stronger. Not what we had before, we could never have that. But something new, something earned, something real. 1 year after Leo moved into the villa, we had a conversation that changed everything. Dad, he said, as we were working together in the kitchen, he was learning to cook for me, and I was learning from him. I learned that my son had inherited my patience and attention to detail when it came to precision tasks. I wanted to tell you something. What's that? I'm proud of you, he said, meeting my eyes. I know that sounds weird coming from a kid to his father, but I mean it. I'm proud of the way you handled everything. You didn't get revenge. You didn't try to destroy Damien or Mom. You just became the best version of yourself and let that speak for itself. I stopped chopping the vegetables and looked at my son, not the angry, cruel boy who'd mocked me, and not the broken, guilty boy who'd first came to my villa seeking forgiveness. But someone in between, someone still healing but also growing. That means more to me than you can possibly understand, I said. I also want to tell you that I love you, he continued. Not because you're rich or because you bought me cool stuff or because you have an awesome villa, but because you're a good man. Because you love me even when I don't deserve it. Because you're teaching me what it means to have integrity. I pulled him into a hug, and for the first time since this entire journey began, I felt truly, completely whole. Epilogue. 5 years later. The success story, as the business magazines would later call it, had become legendary in financial circles. The surveyor who turned an initial $100 million stake into a portfolio worth over $900 million. The man who'd invested in emerging tech companies before anyone else, who'd recognized trends in renewable energy years before they became mainstream, who'd built a diversified empire that spanned multiple industries. But the real story, the one that mattered, was quieter. Leo had graduated from high school with honors and was now in his second year studying physics at one of the country's top universities. He still lived at the villa, though he was increasingly independent, coming and going with friends, attending lectures, working part-time at a technology company where they recognized his brilliance with algorithms and data analysis. My relationship with my son had evolved into a genuine friendship. We still had dinner together most nights, though his schedule was increasingly busy. We still played music together, though now Leo had moved from guitar to learning the piano. We still talked about everything: his classes, his dreams, his romantic interests, his fears about the future. The villa was no longer a monument to anything. It was simply home. We'd hosted Leo's graduation party there, inviting all his friends and teachers. We'd had my business associates over for dinners. We'd become involved with the community, hosting fundraisers for the local schools and education initiatives. I'd started a foundation dedicated to helping underprivileged children get access to quality education. It was something I'd thought about doing for years, but it took becoming a father again to realize why it mattered so much. Every child deserved the chance to become whatever they wanted to be. Every child deserved someone who believed in them. Veronica had moved on completely. She'd married the kind man I'd seen her with at charity events, a schoolteacher named Marcus. They had a small apartment in the suburbs and seemed genuinely happy. She'd reached out through Leo to thank me once for helping her get out of the situation with Damien. I'd simply nodded. That chapter was closed. Damien had disappeared from our collective consciousness. Last I heard, he'd moved to another city to escape his debts and start over. I didn't think about him anymore. My family, the relatives who'd mocked me, who'd called me a loser, who'd celebrated my humiliation, had gradually realized that I wasn't interested in reconciliation or favors. Some of them eventually stopped trying to reconnect. Others remained persistent, occasionally appearing at charity events or church functions, always with the hope that perhaps this time I might be willing to help them with their financial troubles or business ventures. I helped a few of them, the ones who asked humbly and who seemed to genuinely want to improve their lives. But for most of them, I maintained a polite but firm distance. They were a reminder of a time when I'd valued their approval too highly, and I had no interest in returning to that version of myself. On a warm evening in autumn, 5 years after that day at Grand Manor Estates, Leo and I sat on the terrace, as we so often did. He was talking about a girl from his physics class, someone brilliant and kind, someone he was thinking about asking out. "What do you think?" he asked nervously. "Is that a good idea? We're study partners. I don't want to make things weird. What does your gut tell you?" I asked. "That she's worth the risk," he said quietly. "Then I think you should tell her," I said. "Life is full of risks, Leo. The important thing is to take them for the right reasons." He nodded, considering this. We sat in silence for a while, watching the city lights begin to twinkle in the darkness. This was my favorite time of day, that quiet moment between sunset and night, when everything felt possible and peaceful at the same time. "Dad," Leo asked. "Yes? Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't gotten rich?" I considered the question seriously. "Sometimes," I admitted. "I think about what my life would have looked like if that stock had never taken off. And honestly, I think I would have been okay. Not happy maybe, but okay. Because by the time the stock made money, I'd already learned the most important thing." "What's that?" "That my worth wasn't determined by how much money I had, or whether my family loved me, or whether people respected me. My worth was something intrinsic. Something that couldn't be taken away by betrayal or humiliation or poverty. Once I understood that, everything else fell into place." Leo smiled and leaned his head against my shoulder again, a habit he still hadn't grown out of, and I was grateful for it. "I'm glad you figured that out," he said. "Because I'm really glad I have you as my dad." "And I'm really glad I have you as my son," I replied. The villa remained beautiful, but it was no longer the point. The money remained abundant, but it was no longer the goal. What mattered was this: the quiet evening, the comfortable silence, the knowledge that we'd both survived something terrible and had come out stronger on the other side. Years later, when Leo would write about this period in his life, which he eventually would, in a memoir about resilience and reconciliation, he would say that the moment that changed everything wasn't when I bought the villa, but when I cried on the terrace that first night, allowing myself to grieve and heal. He would say that his father's greatest strength wasn't his ability to make money, but his ability to rebuild from ruins with integrity intact. And he would be right. The stock portfolio continued to grow. The villa continued to appreciate in value. The foundation continued to help thousands of children every year. But those were just the external measures of success. The real measure, the only measure that mattered, was the relationship between a father and son, built not on wealth or status, but on love, forgiveness, and the courage to become better than your circumstances. And that, I had learned, was worth more than all the money in the world.